Hey there. Welcome to the Business Behind the Game, where we break down the business side of sports from emerging trends to the people and companies shaping the industry today. I'm Kashag, and today we have a really exciting guest, Kate Allgood. Kate is a mental performance coach and the founder of Quantum Performance, a company focused on helping athletes and performers develop the mental skills needed to perform at their best. She's worked across multiple levels of sports, helping individuals and teams build confidence, consistency, and resilience through evidence based mental performance training. Before we start today, how are you doing today?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to get this started as well. So, I just wanted to start off. How did you first get into mental performance and what led you down this path of working with athletes and performers?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't think there was one specific moment. My background is in athletics. I was a high-level hockey player, and I think when I was starting to make take my focus to what my life was going to look like after being the athlete, I knew I still wanted to stay in the world of sports and performance. And so I started to explore what that could look like. I looked at being a sports agent, a gym teacher,
Hmm.
and then in my undergrad, I actually started off as a sports management major and took a first year psychology class in undergrad and fell in love with the subject. And so I decided after my first year to change my major to psychology and through that process I got to explore a lot of different avenues of psychology and was able to take a couple classes in sports psychology. When I graduated, I took a little bit of a break from formal education and so actually went and started working with athletes on performance biomechanics. So I got certified in a technique called muscle activation techniques. And then after a couple of years, actually did a year of Oriental medicine school and then eventually went back and got two master's degrees. So it was kind of a
Wow. Yeah.
slow process of, really finding the right fit and right match for me and just realizing that understanding the mind and training the mind was more of what I wanted to do long term with athletes and my career.
Yeah. You just talked a little bit about your background, and was there like a specific moment or experience or like any realization where you knew this was something you wanted to pursue long term, or do you think it just developed over a bunch of time?
Yeah, I think for me, it developed over a bunch of time. I think through my own personal experience, which is separate from what I do, but I worked with a therapist when I was still being a player,
Hmm.
and then getting introduced to sports psychology in undergrad, and then doing work on the physical side with athletes. I think I just really started to realize through all of that that this was what I wanted to do.
Yeah. What do you really like about sports psychology? Because I know it's like, I think just throughout the last couple of years, it's definitely emerging a lot. You're seeing a lot more athletes getting like therapists and stuff like that as well. Why do you think it's so important for athletes to have to focus on their mental health as well as their physical health as well?
Yeah, I think it's super important, and obviously therapists and what I do have different roles and different things that are played, but it's very similar to if you're looking at the physical side, athletes have a strength and conditioning coach, a nutritional coach or nutritionist usually, but then they might need to do some other deeper work. They still probably see doctors and all those things. So I
Yeah.
think on the mental side, you really have to look at both the mental health and the mental performance, which are two different containers. They obviously can kind of cross over a little bit. And I think it's really important for athletes to be mindful of that. And I think that's been the biggest shift over the last few years is athletes are much more open to it. Uh, Famous athletes are much more, talkative about it, which then
Yeah.
again helps other younger athletes feel like this is something that they can do and don't feel the stigma behind it anymore.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just become such an important thing where you have to understand if you're going to train your body and take care of your body's health, you ought to do the same thing with your mind.
Yeah, I think yeah for sure, especially with confidence and they're off their away from the sport, the work that they do, they definitely need to be focused and have the confidence to play as well. So I want to shift a little bit over to your current role. And for those who aren't familiar, can you walk us through what quantum performance does and then the problem you're ultimately trying to solve for athletes?
It's a good question. So what quantum performance ultimately does is help athletes train their mind. So really to be able to have the skills, the mindset, and the performance that are needed from the perspective of their mind. And the problem I'm trying to solve for athletes really is how can they, one, perform under pressure consistently, and have the same type of focus, decision making, communication, I will use the word confidence, but ultimately it's self-trust when the
Yeah.
pressure is on, when it's a critical moment to be able to say that I perform the same in practice as I do in a championship game and to make sure that they can be consistent. And then I think ultimately too, can they be consistent under pressure and throughout this whole journey still enjoy what they are doing to not to be able to I guess find a holistic way of approaching it that's going to make this something that is sustainable for them and not something that's going to burn them out.
Yeah. So when you're doing your consulting with athletes, is it more like a one-on-one session, or is there any other kind of methods or ways you meet with them to really help them? Yeah.
Yeah, for me majority of it is one-on-one. I think that is what I'm much better at. That's my specialty. But I have done group presentations. I've done that for a professional team I've worked for.
Yeah.
I've done that for local organizations. So I definitely can do the group presentations. And I think they have their role. But for me, I think I really enjoy going deep with a client and with an athlete. And you really need that one-on-one time and those consistent sessions to really help someone kind of transform.
Yeah. So you just talked about a little bit about your one-on-one sessions and a little bit shifting, and also quantum performance as well. And I wanted to shift more to you personally. Like, what does your typical day look like running quantum performance, and how is this different from maybe earlier stages of your career?
It changes. So day to day, there's no, for me, Monday can look different than Tuesday, and one Monday from the previous Monday can look different. So really, first and foremost, my clients get set in place. So those appointments are generally first and foremost how I'm going to schedule my day. And then from there, I'm going to weave in the business side of the equation. So for
Hmm.
me, I do pretty much all of it myself. So whether it's marketing, making adjustments to my website, any social media posts, YouTube videos, a little bit of bookkeeping. So that's what the rest of my day is going to kind of be filled with. I still am, also doing the things that I tell my clients to do. So I'll also during the day make sure I get my meditation in,
Hmm.
exercise, any self-care, saunas, cold plunges, going to the beach. So that's also very, very important because I'm not going to tell somebody to do something I wouldn't do myself.
Yeah.
And so that's really what kind of my day looks like. And so some days maybe more client heavy, right? And that's going to be the primary focus that day. And then some days maybe you're a little bit more administrative focused.
Yeah. Just following up on that, can you walk us through how a one-on-one session looks with your athlete?
Yeah, one-on-one session generally what the framework is going to look like is somebody's going to walk in and they're going to give me a little bit of an overview of what's been going on since the last time we met. If it's only been a week, it'll probably be a little bit more of an in-depth overview. If it's been a month, then
Yeah.
it might have to be a broader,
Yeah.
kind of overview. But I kind of obviously have to understand what's been going on since I last saw them.
Hmm.
And then from there, really see if there's anything in particular they want to dive into, anything that they want to build off of that we've already talked about was a sticking point for them. And we really need to, dive deep into it or just a little bit of a pain point. If they don't have anything specific, then I'll generally start to, look at things that we've already been covering and really move on to maybe the next topic or thing that I think we need to start building for them. They all have workbooks and journals, and some of them have access to an app that I've created. And so I'll also kind of look through that and see if there's anything they wrote down where maybe I want to pull on that a little bit and go a little bit deeper with that. And then generally by the end of it, I'm going to be giving them something to now go implement, between this session and the next time that we meet. And then kind of we'll repeat that process.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And also earlier, you mentioned about bookkeeping, and I saw that you wrote a couple books, one of them being The Athlete Within, which I can see in your camera as well. Can you talk a little bit what made you wanted to write the book, and what a little bit what the book's about as well?
Yeah, so The Athlete Within is my third book. That book really is, I wrote it, I guess maybe 3 or 4 years ago now. And it got published, I think, about 2 years ago. Uh, really everything I'd learned to that point and really kind of putting it into three different main umbrellas of really knowing yourself, choosing your own way and presence, and then really kind of from there, having their branches beneath that of different areas and topics and subjects that I've really done a lot of work on with athletes. So it really is a great in-depth overview if you're really looking to build your mental game about how to do that. And I think for me, why I wrote that book was just I had more to say from my first two books, and that was the method I wanted to do it in at the time. Initially, the very first book I wrote was really, it was at a time where not as many people were writing books. Now it's a different
Hmm.
story. So it kind of was a differentiator. It was a lower price point, so for people who maybe couldn't
Yeah.
afford my one-on-one services, to just give them a little something,
Yeah.
and a little idea of who I am and the way that I work and my philosophy. And there are people there, I have gotten clients from those books, so they get a taste of my philosophy and how
Yeah.
I work. And then if they want to move forward with a program with me, then it's a great kind of first step for them.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Just writing a book as well, because I mean, obviously, you can do all the business stuff, you can do the one-on-one consulting, but I mean, just having a book for other people to read is definitely also a good way to get more people in as well.
Mhm.
So you work a lot in the mental side. Um, is there, from your perspective, what mental traits do you think tend to separate high-level performers from everyone else?
Good question. I think self-trust, I think,
Hmm.
is a big one because everyone has self-doubt. Even the highest performers have a bit of self-doubt
Yeah.
and their confidence can waver at times. But the athletes that are able to, and the high performers that are able to navigate through those moments, they have an incredible amount of self-trust in them, in what they bring to the table, right? Their ability to adapt, to respond, and they really learn how to lean into that and make that the primary thing they're focusing on. That's going to really steady them through maybe some of those more shaky moments that they're experiencing. And then I think another really key component of it is the ability to have awareness and being observers, to not be defined by their thoughts or their feelings or
Hmm.
to really be able to create space between them and to be able to choose a different path and not just let one negative thought or one self-doubt thought create a whole big story or define their experience or define their performance, and to be able to really know that it is just a thought, and they have a choice to listen to it or to focus on something else.
Yeah, definitely. I think self trust is a huge part as well. And also on the mental side, like mental performance is definitely like a lot harder to quantify than physical metrics, because if you're like lifting weights or you're measuring your vertical jump, it's easy to measure with numbers like your weight going up, the height you jump is going up as well. How do you evaluate the progress and impact when you're working with your athletes?
It's a good one. I think that is one of the hardest, as you said, things to do. We don't
Yeah.
have the same metrics as the physical, which can make it harder, and harder for obviously on my end to assess, but also for the clients to know if things are progressing. But you can tell because you start to notice things differently. And that's a big part of where self-reflection comes in, where you start to become aware of how maybe your response to a mistake has changed over time. And sometimes it's going to be other people also who maybe will start to observe the changes, not the athlete themselves, because they're watching them.
Mhm.
Maybe it's they see that they, have better body language after a strikeout or something like that. So
Yeah.
it's those kind of things you start to have to really look at, and again, that's where reflection is for the athlete a huge component of the equation to make
Yeah.
sure that they can start to see those changes.
Yeah. So we just talked a little bit about yourself and your company as well. Now I want to shift more to like industry trends. So from a business and industry standpoint, what trends are you seeing right now in athletes' mental performance?
It's a good question. What trends am I seeing right now? I don't know if I'm really, I mean, that might just be me. Maybe I'm not as, on
Yeah.
the pulse of things, but I don't know if I'm seeing any trends that are overly different than I've ever seen. I think that just the overarching trend in the mental performance, there is the trend of that this is a important thing to focus on, that it has more eyes on it and more of a lens on it than ever before. I think that would just be from a broader perspective, I guess, trend that you're starting to see.
Yeah, you just talked. Yeah, you just talked a little bit about how they were increasing, and or how mental performance and sports psychology as well is really increasing in the sports space. How do you see like organizations, teams, and athletes like investing differently in this space compared to like a couple years ago?
Teams definitely. I think most major league teams in North America now have someone like myself on staff or contracted to a team.
Hmm.
The level and how much they're there does still differentiate and
Yeah.
does differentiate between leagues, but it's definitely grown a tremendous amount over the last few years about how many schools, professional teams at all different levels, understand that they need somebody in this space to be around their athletes.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's definitely like extremely important, especially having them on staff and having them easily accessible is really important for the athletes as well. So I wanted to shift over a little bit to the challenges that you faced. Obviously, like building a company in sports and just building a company in general isn't easy. What has been one of the toughest challenges you've faced building quantum performance?
Probably the business side, because you're not taught that in school. You're
Yeah,
taught to be the practitioner. So I think just learning how to run a business, and I did it very much the hard way. So there were a lot of mistakes. I don't want to say mistakes, but there were a lot of things I didn't do well or had to learn
yeah,
the hard way. I think it's just staying on like where everything is. Like I'm always having, I don't want to say reinvent, but you have to kind of stay with on top of things. So as I said, like I just developed an app this year, which I think is good, is a great, resource for my clients where, 5, 10 years ago, that wasn't going to be a thing that I was going to
yeah,
have as
yeah,
part of, the products with my clients. So it's just keeping up with things, while at the same time, making sure that you don't drift too far away from what does work. So like I always say, for example, meditation is something I've, told athletes to do from
yeah,
16 years ago when I first started doing this to today. So you always have to make sure also at the same time that you're not chasing too many maybe new and flashy things, and understand
hmm
that ultimately when it comes down to performance, there's some really key core aspects to it that have not changed over the years. And athletes will need to get really good at them, and instead of just giving them a lot of information and a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
different tools, like let's really make sure you're going to be solid in these really important core skill sets and mindset aspects, and not start to give them too much too soon.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's definitely really important. And also, you just mentioned a little bit about your app. Can you talk a little bit what the app does and how it helps your athletes?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that I designed the app, I kind of looked at what was out there and what I felt, I think would help people that I've been working with for a long time, and athletes that maybe I'm not even working with. And so I have these playbooks that are in there, and that's really the core component of the app. And the playbooks really go into both, you know, core skills, but also more in-depth skills. So there are things like vulnerability. There's a playbook on vulnerability in there. There's a playbook on optimism, but then there's also a playbook on self-talk in there.
Mhm.
And each playbook is then divided into different sections. And I designed it for, understanding that people don't have a lot of time, but they also
Yeah,
need this information. They need to learn and to develop things. So each, section is only maybe 3 to 5 minutes. So I tell my clients, hey, like you can listen to a section a day and then listen to the next section the next day. So really go out getting that repetition in that's necessary, but not having to carve out a huge amount of time. And then there's worksheets and other things that are associated with it, again, to
yeah,
help them
yeah,
learn and implement things. But then there's also other resources and support in there, like guided meditations, pre-performance resets, mental rehearsal, and some of these other things that they can then use to support themselves in a moment if they're needing a little extra help. There's some journals and workbooks in there as well. So it was really me, building what I thought would really help people that I've been working with, in between one-on-one sessions, and then also even for people who can't maybe do one-on-one sessions, to really give them something that's gonna help them.
yep. I really like that. Obviously, being conscious of people, especially athletes that don't have a lot of time on their hands, and just having short stuff for them to look at is was really important. And did you build the app by yourself, or or you work with other people as well to build it?
No, I actually did it myself.
Oh wow, that's really cool. So we just talked a little bit about your app, and your business as well. When you look ahead in the next 3 to 5 years, what are you most excited about building with quantum performance?
Such an interesting question. Probably the app's going to be a big thing, especially in I guess, the short, long term, like next 3 years. I'm still building it out. So when I launched it, I'd created enough of a foundation that was, would be good for people. But now I'm continually building it out, building out new playbooks and new little maybe features within it. So I think that's a huge part in getting that word out and trying to, build a base for that. I think that's usually one of the biggest things that I'm really, looking forward to. Beyond that, it's continually working with clients that I love to work with who are dedicated to this journey and are wanting to really explore it and to, help those individuals get to another level for themselves.
You also mentioned earlier about like running most of the business by yourself. Are you planning to get more people in, or do you want to do you like the self business?
Currently, I don't. Yeah, I plan on continuing just, having me as the only practitioner within the business. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and also your books as well. Do you plan on writing more books down the line, or you think you're done with the books you wrote so far?
For now, I am done, and one of the reasons is I think because with the app, I think that just right now is maybe potentially a little bit more powerful, and I think again because I can expand it, I can add things as I see things, maybe the need for things like I can
Mhm.
a playbook that I'm not even thinking about today, maybe 6 months from now, I'm like, oh, that's going to be a really good thing for me to
Yeah,
add, and that becomes much easier. And I think it just goes with the way people are, right? Somebody can be walking from class or driving in a car and listen to it and can, as I said, it's super short. And each one gives you an entry point and things to work on and then a wrap up and then you're good and now you can move on to the next topic. So I think for me, that's just more of where I think my focus will be.
yeah, yeah. How do you see a role evolving, and what kind of impact do you hope to like make on athletes in the sports industry as a whole?
I hope that for how my role evolves, that this becomes not just something people say they know they need, but they actually now make it a priority. And that's definitely something where I still see a gap. I think people talk about, this is important, but the next step of really making it a priority, creating the time. Most people are still more focused on their physical development. I think hopefully that, for my role will continue. And supporting clients in the future is just really, again, continually doing what I'm doing and, offering the best services that I possibly can be for future clients.
Yeah, you mentioned about how it took like a long time for mental performance to become like a huge part of the sports industry. Why do you think that is? Because obviously, like I mean, now that you're in the role yourself, and you can see that mental performance is a really big part of an athlete as well. Why do you think it took so long for that to come up?
And yeah, I think it still is it trying to find its place. It's a good question because everyone knows how powerful the mind is, and everyone knows that this is, once you get to a certain level, definitely the biggest differentiating factor. I think there's maybe a couple things. I think one, because it is intangible, which we talked about, right? You can't
Yeah,
measure it like you can
yeah,
see, oh, I just pushed 10 extra pounds this week compared to last week, right? So there's
yeah.
a that you're missing that element. And I think also time and place. I think when you
Hmm.
think about, again, training, whether it's like going to practice or doing your strength and conditioning, there's a time and a place to go and do it. There's a
Yeah,
setting
yeah.
and you go to the gym and you go and you do it for 45 minutes and you've gone there. Maybe there have been some friends there and some teammates, and then you're done. So with this, there isn't that. So again, where do you weave it into your life and into your day? And I think that sometimes, contributes to why it's a little bit behind.
Yeah, how much do you think coaches play a factor into that as well? Because obviously, for a lot of people, like coaches talk a lot about like toughing it out, or like kind of ignoring them, almost like ignoring the mental side and focusing more on the physical side. What do you think is like the role of coaches in that?
I think coaches, especially depending on the level and the league and where they are, plays a huge role. And I saw that with when I worked with a professional team. If you have a coach that buys into it, wants the team to buy into it, really truly supports it, it makes a huge difference comparative to
Yeah,
if somebody is not really, doesn't really care about it, doesn't see the benefit of it, or just like whatever, it's a side thing over here. So I think coaches and organizations as a whole play a huge component and a huge role of this. And I think that's, the organizations that see this as a fundamental thing that needs to exist and probably see the benefit of it. Other ones where it's kind of this thing we're just doing because we know we need to. They obviously, see things in a different way. So yeah, no, I think it's a huge part of the equation.
yeah. I think definitely someone needs to like step in and kind of lead the charge, because even earlier you mentioned about like older athletes kind of showing that the mental part is a really important part of the game as well, and that like encourages young athletes to follow in their steps as well. So before we wrap up, I just had a question: what advice would you give to me and my audience who want to break into the sports business world, especially those who are interested in areas like mental performance, sports psychology, or athlete development, but like they aren't sure which direction to take?
Go start exploring because again, I think it's just, find somebody to talk to, see if you can shadow, see if you can learn some information, just, get out there, become a coach if you can. I think really figuring out which lane you want to be in, I think is an important thing, but just being involved in the sports world. If you're already an athlete, you're already kind of there. But I think just starting to really research and understand yourself too, and what you think is going to work best for you. If you're not a great listener, then doing something that like I do is probably not the best,
Yeah,
lane to be in. If you're not, for me, I never was this very vocal leader, so I knew being a strength and conditioning coach wasn't going to be probably the best lane for me. So
yeah.
I think part of it is knowing yourself and then figuring out what you're really passionate about. Because I think when you're passionate about something, then it ceases to be a job and you'll truly enjoy it, and just put in the work.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I think that was a really great way to end up the episode as well. I really enjoyed talking to you, and you had some great insights. So that's a wrap for today's episode, and huge thanks to Kate for sharing her stories and insights. And you can check out her work through the links below. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. I'm Kushag, and I'll catch you next time.